enrolling in those classes can affect their aid. So they need to take advantage of resources. And we try to have all of those conversations up front. But like Scott said, it's an ongoing kind of relationship. And so they will come back into the financial aid offices. Well, nobody told me this. Well, we were trying to give you these other 300, pieces of information. And so this other 200, the facts and figures that you need to know, we had to save for another time. But it's a holistic kind of thing where we're trying across departments to have that conversation about what does your life picture look like. And a lot of times the financial part of that is a conversation, but it's mirrored and married to the academic conversation that advisors are having with students.
Question for financial aid really quick. For the non-traditional student with aid, if they test low on their assessment exam, are their prep classes covered by financial aid if they're AA or AA student?
Currently they're not. We're working on some policies and programming to make that possible. But currently they're not unless it falls into the electives area. So if they're in a program that doesn't have an electives area, right now it can't be covered. So, and then you come to the backside of the conversation where the student has used some of their electives area for the development or remedial coursework, and so they lose, possibly some of their electives in that process too. So we're working on some things to try to minimize that issue.
Question.
How dependent are you on the students doing their own research for scholarships? I'm from the library, so how much do we need to support that material?
I think it's a very good thing to partner. We are very dependent on students doing some of their own research, and we have the scholarships links on our websites right now. There's about 3 or 4 places throughout campus where students could apply for scholarships, so we do have those links. Most of the time it's not, we're kind of like advising. There's a lengthy conversation that has to happen, but there's also, we see 27,000 students in a year. So it's hard to have that lengthy conversation and pull up the websites and actually go through the criteria that the student might need and all of these different things. So I think a partnership with the library is great because it is somewhat, they are autonomous in finding their own scholarships at times.
Excuse me, I just have a comment. That non-traditional student who comes in and is told, I don't know who's telling them this, but they come in and say, I have to be full-time. And there's no requirement to be full-time, as Kevin had said. And if they keep taking full-time credits and they keep dropping a course or failing a course, it's eventually going to catch up with them and they're going to have a standard issue with percent. So it's important that we do tell them, there's no requirement to be full-time. And I recommend maybe only taking 2 classes at the beginning and doing really well. Test it out, see how good you're doing. If you do well, then of course take more if you feel good about it. But at the beginning, I think it's important when they're the non-traditional student to be advised. And in many cases, it's important for them to know if you get Pell Grant and you only go part-time, then the Pell's left over for summer. So it's not like you lose that Pell Grant. You still have leftover Pell for summer. In most cases. In rare cases, that might not be if your EFC is a certain number. But in most cases, that's true. Just wanted to say that.
That's what I call baby steps with my students. When they come in as non-traditionals, baby steps. Take 1, be successful. Take 2, move on.
I need you to ask a question.
I just kind of want to clarify the comment about prep courses. Are we talking about DevEd courses? Because those are not electives. Those don't count towards a degree at all. But I was under the assumption that they were covered by financial aid.
There's several definitions of DevEd coursework. For the federal government, they call them actually remedial courses. So that's our definition, the Fed's financial aid definition of them. But they apply to a number of categories that are technical and specific, but for the feds, they look at them all the same as remedial coursework. And the only way that we're actually allowed to cover them in any kind of program is under those electives currently. So the way that the policies were written, the guidance that we had up until last year, December of 2014, said that these classes were not fundable, and the way we found kind of around that was to add it into the electives area. Since then, the Department of Ed has released guidance that says we can fund developmental coursework. We can have a separate category for it. We can include it in this other area where it's fundable up to 30 hours. But that policy hasn't, it's intertwined with a lot of other policies for financial aid and a lot of other programming that's, going on for financial aid. So it's taking time to implement that. But yes, it is developmental coursework. But it also applies to preparatory coursework for entry into a program. It applies to, several different categories, but developmental coursework is one of those categories.
We're going to move on to our next scenario. We have a veteran on campus with aid. A veteran with aid on campus. Veteran with aid. Where do they go first? Yeah, middle school.
Hi. Okay. So normally they come into our office, and the first thing we ask them is, has they actually applied to Santa Fe? Because I feel like 9 out of 10 times they haven't. They come in, they're like, I have a benefit, and so I want to use it. So we make sure that they actually have applied, and if they haven't, we have computers in there that we can help them through that process and explain to them about the testing and all those sorts of things. The second thing we ask them is, have they applied for financial aid? A lot of times veterans think that they don't get financial aid because they have GI Bill benefits, and so it's important to let them know that they actually can apply for financial aid because they're not any longer making that income that they were when they were on active duty. From there, then we ask them, have they actually applied for the benefit? So if you think it's automatic, I have my DD-214 in hand, and so now I have the GI Bill. It's something that they actually have to apply for on the VA website, set up an account, and then apply for the benefit. And that's a long process, so we actually prefer for them to come in early as well, so that they can apply for it ahead of time. For new enrollments, first time using a GI Bill, it takes the VA up to 60 days to actually process that. We can go ahead and certify them for the courses that they're registered for if they apply and they have a schedule in hand with the 214, with the caveat that if it comes back that they don't rate the benefit that they thought they did, they're responsible to pay the school for those courses. We can estimate what they might be eligible for based on the length of service, but it's ultimately up to the VA to determine what their percentage is. We don't make any of the determinations on how much benefit they rate. We just process the actual enrollment certification. So that's something that's really important, depending on which GI Bill they have as well. There are several different chapters. The most common one is the post 9/11, Chapter 33, which pays the tuition and fees directly to the college, and then they get a housing allowance. And with that, to rate the full housing allowance, they have to actually live full-time. So a lot of times the veterans that come in, they're going to want to take the 12 credit hours, even if they're not ready for that, because they want the full housing allowance. A lot of times they're using that as their source of income while they're in college. For the Chapter 30s, which is the Montgomery GI Bill, the old GI Bill, and also the Chapter 35, which is the dependents of a deceased or disabled service member, they're responsible for paying the tuition to the college. So the VA will pay them, and then they have to pay the school directly. And that's something that we've encountered a couple of problems with the dependents. They've been getting the money and they keep it and spend it because we give them a deferment. So when they come in and register, we'll give them a deferment just like we do all the other chapters, and then they think, oh, I don't have to pay the school back, and then they get a debt letter. I actually had a parent come in last week that was really upset because the son attended the whole summer and never paid and spent all the money, and now he can't register for this coming semester because he owes all the money back. So that's something really, really important, that we do have them sign accountability statements saying, depending on what chapter, whether or not the VA is going to pay the school directly or they're going to be responsible for it. Sometimes they rush through it and just sign everything, and they're not really paying attention when we're briefing them. so we're actually starting a new veterans orientation. We're calling it Boots to Books. And it's going to start in the spring. And so we're really excited about that. We're going to have 2 sessions, one in November and one in January, where we go through every single chapter in depth, because a lot of times, especially the first couple weeks before courses start and then that first week of classes, there are so many individuals in our office, and a lot of times the work studies get stressed out, and so they're kind of rushing them through the briefing, and so we want to make sure that they're actually getting all the information that they need. So we're going to do our own sort of orientation, and we're going to have financial aid there to speak, as well as the VA hospital and the DRC, I believe, a couple other of our resources here on campus to really explain to them what they need to do to make sure that they're successful in college here at Santa Fe.
Is admissions, is there a different process or length of time that it takes for veterans to get all their information the same as those workers?
No.
Anyone have
Everything
any?
is pretty much the same. They do qualify, whether they get aid or they don't get aid. There's also another element, which is whether they qualify for waivers or exemptions. So that is often looked at and told to the student.
So yeah, for the out-of-state waivers, we do those in our office as well. As long as they have a DD 214 with an honorable discharge and Tier 1 proof of residency, which would be a Florida driver's license, we can give them the out-of-state waiver right then on the spot. Otherwise, they would have to bring in a lease and a current bill for that address as well, and then we can give them the out-of-state waiver.
So,
No, the license doesn't have to be 12 months, so they could go to the DMV that day and get a license, and we would be able to process it.
I've referred a couple of guys to you who lost their DD 14. How they get out of it?
It's actually kept archived on, if they create a benefits account on the myva.gov, they can access it. If they are unable to create an account for some reason, we actually are one of only 83 sites in the nation that have a V, it's called a VSOC, it's an actual VA employee, Charlotte Kemper. If any of you ever met her, she's Vet Success on campus. So she has access to all the VA systems, so she can pull the DD 214 in our offices.
any questions?
I actually am quite pleased to announce that we this year qualify for additional state funding for veterans. It's under the Honorably Discharged Graduate Assistance Program, and they don't have to be in a graduate program, it's just the title of the state funds, the source. And so we'll be able to provide an additional approximately $1,000 stipend for some of our qualified veterans on campus. So that's something that's new. We applied last year, didn't get any funding this year. We were able to. So there are resources for different groups. And like she said, if you know, making sure they have those conversations with us, if their income has changed, those kinds of things. So it's a personalized conversation, and we're always looking for ways to better serve veterans.
All right, any questions? Question in the back?
Just for the centers, we have a lot of vets come in, but many of them don't have transportation to the main campus. Does the office in any way provide transportation that I'm missing, or to get them here from other areas?
Other than them riding the bus, now there is a program in place. I have the contact in my office, but where they live in outside of the Gainesville area, like say they're traveling from like Melrose or Keystone, there is a van transportation service that I believe it's $1 that will get them to an RTS station. So they can take that then to get into Gainesville.
Any other questions?
Mia touched on this, but if you have a veteran who just got out of the military and is getting loans only, he should come talk to us because he may qualify for professional judgment. We're allowed to look at if they received income last year, but they're not receiving it now, send them to us so that we can look at that for them.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to move on.
Is that just for veterans? Or
For veterans, you just started.
Just for veterans?
We're going to move on to the next scenario. We're moving on to,
It's for anybody, it's not just for veterans.
oh, the professional judgment. It is not just for veterans, it's for anybody. Perfect. For me.
Okay, I want to clarify that, if student income has changed, the situation has changed, we do want to have a conversation with the student to see if they qualify for that professional judgment. If you've ever been on the website and looked through some of the forms, because that's what you do in your free time, if you look at the professional judgment form, it's a fairly lengthy process, and there's lots of documentation required, so it's not something that, if you decided that, you just don't want to work anymore and you just walk kind of, oh, well, I'll get loans and just kind of hang out at school. It's lengthy, it's involved, and it's really for those circumstances that are unpreventable or, specialized situations like military, change in income. It's for specific situations, but we don't want to deter people if they really have those situations. We do want them to come in and have those conversations with us. So I just wanted to clarify that it does apply to all students, not just veterans, but it is for specialized circumstances.
So if someone, like, for example, the last fiscal year made $100,000 a year and would be ineligible for aid and then gets laid off just before December or whatever, there's some serious situation and they end up not having zero income for the next and all their savings is gone. There might be potential. That's what this is for.
Yes. And then, I don't know how many of you know this, President Obama did by executive order what we call in the financial aid business, prior year. So what that means is that students will be filing their FAFSAs even earlier than January 1st, possibly in October of the prior year for the upcoming fall, for that next fall, so October 2016, someone could file a FAFSA and apply for financial aid for August or September of 2017. So it's extending that window of which families can apply, and a lot of those situations are going to come up now because that's really old income information, and there will be adjustments that have to be made for students and families whose income has changed. So we're just trying to prepare for that.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. We're going to move on to the next scenario, and it is an international student who wants aid or scholarships. An international student who wants aid or scholarships. They're new. They're coming here to Santa Fe. How do we get them ready?
Where do they start?
Where do they start? Where do they start? Where do they start? First place they go.
Okay, so at Santa Fe College, we define an international student as anybody who is a non-U.S. citizen and a non-U.S. permanent resident. Anybody who is a non-U.S. citizen and a non-U.S. permanent resident. That's a lot of people. We have only about 250 F1 visa students on our campus. And I highlight that because those are the ones that ultimately ISS is responsible for. We are ultimately responsible for the F1 visa students because I issue the documents under my name and under Santa Fe College to bring those individuals into the United States and to keep them here. However, the U.S. Immigration Service identifies visa classes A through V and refugees, asylees, temporary protected status, and individuals with no documents whatsoever. So when we're talking about what is international, we identify anybody who is a non-U.S. citizen and a non-U.S. permanent resident. If they meet those two criteria, they are international, and they will be assisted through the admissions process in ISS. ISS is located in the general admissions office area, so you come in through R101, and you ask Jeremy, the front desk, and he will direct you. to ISS.